And the E3 hype train continues. It's been a day full of press conferences that followed a night of a press conference, but we're still going. We've got Bethesda down, Microsoft down, Electronic Arts down, Ubisoft down. My fingers are filling up fast. We still have Sony to go, and scuttlebutt on the street is that Sony is going to have a really impressive press conference, which would be pretty incredible because I think it's actually been a great day for video games with lots of really cool things announced, a mixture of brand new stuff, games we already knew were coming but look spectacular. It's gotten me really excited about the next 12 to 18 months of video games, and hopefully you're excited too. Please let me know what you think down in the comments as we are following along together for E3 2015, but I wanted to take a couple of minutes to walk through some thoughts on Ubisoft's press conference, which just wrapped, and I gotta say, the thing that they opened with is kind of the last game I expected Ubisoft to be making. So they picked up South Park: The Stick of Truth when THQ went under and all their games are being sold in a flash sale to just, who wants them? Will you take this game? Please take this game. And South Park: The Stick of Truth had famously had an extremely troubled development that seemed partially fueled by some ongoing feelings that maybe Obsidian kind of has trouble making games. You know, they had a history of shipping some buggy products and games taking a long time, so there was some speculation that maybe that was part of the reason the Stick of Truth was taking so long. But if you talk to, well, you know, because I just call up Matt Stone and Trey Parker all the time, but if you listen to the interviews that they've done, if you've read the interviews that they've conducted, they suggested they also bit off way more than they could chew in terms of the ambition of South Park: The Stick of Truth. And it really wasn't until much later in the development process that that game actually started coming together. In some ways, it sounds like until Ubisoft got a hold of it and said, what are you guys doing? This game actually needs to ship, that the Stick of Truth actually started becoming something that was a product that shipped and was a lot of fun. I have problems with some of the subject matter that South Park covers and the way that it covers it and the tone that it covers it, but I cannot pretend that I didn't think A Stick of Truth was a phenomenally funny game, and although the combat ceased being interesting about halfway through, I absolutely finished off The Stick of Truth thinking I would love to play another one of these now that they know what worked and what didn't work. And it looks like they're actually getting a chance to do that, but for whatever reason, Obsidian Entertainment is not involved. This is actually being made in collaboration with Ubisoft San Francisco, which, if I look up what exactly Ubisoft San Francisco, what else have they been known for? I'm trying to pull them up now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull up the other games that they've worked on. No, I'm getting pulled to something else completely entirely. Anyway, so they're working on it in San Francisco, and they didn't show a lot of the gameplay off. We don't have any clear idea how far this game is in development. I have a sinking suspicion that it's fairly early and that we're looking at like the earliest holiday 2016 in terms of when we actually play that game. It seemed like Ubisoft actually bookended their press conference with games that are a little bit far off, between opening with South Park and closing with Ghost Recon Wildlands. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing what the next South Park game has to offer. I should probably look up what that title was because it was completely ridiculous. South Park, come on, where is it? South Park: The Fractured But Whole. So I think we'll get that game a lot sooner than the last one. When they came out on stage, Matt Stone and Trey Parker were themselves in that they poked fun at the whole process and the pomp and circumstance of a press conference, saying they thought the microphones they had on their face were fucking stupid, and they, I think, earned themselves an enormous amount of credibility when they act that way. I think Aisha Taylor, the host of the Ubisoft press conference, does her best to try and make that work, but they're, hampered by a corporation that wants to, stay on strict, and they want to be funny, but being funny is only within the certain lengths that they'll allow you to be. And I like the fact that Matt Stone and Trey Parker know that they can come out and do whatever the hell they want, because what is Ubisoft going to say? Like, oh, you're fired, we're not going to make a South Park game. Like, no, they're going to make the South Park game. So I like that Matt Stone and Trey Parker come out. They bring a sort of reality to what an unrealistic situation. It was really funny. I like that they swore. It was very off the cuff, and I like that they seemed generally annoyed that they had to participate in this circus in the first place. So looking forward to seeing what they have in store for the next South Park game, especially when it comes to gameplay mechanics, because like I said, combat was enjoyable, but got a little tiresome as the game went on. They also then announced a game called For Honor, which has been rumored as a game called Hero for a number of years now, that seems to be Ubisoft tackling Dynasty Warriors, except that it's a bunch of dude bro medieval soldiers that are fighting each other on the spoils of war. I can't say that For Honor did a whole lot for me. It was kind of interesting. I guess they seem to be... I really can't. I can't be. If I'm being honest, like I looked at it, I rolled my eyes and said, "Well, maybe this will make sense to me when I actually have a chance to play it, or when I have a chance to sit down and watch some more in-depth gameplay." But in terms of brand new, intellectual properties that seem to be trying something new and being experimental and different, there wasn't a whole lot about For Honor that got me thinking, "Yes, this is the game I've been waiting for, the game I didn't know that I wanted." It just looked like a violent sword fest. The one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that they seem to be implying you're going to have a lot of control over your weapon. In that, let me pull up the quote here that might put that a little more into perspective. They said, using the new Art of Battle system, you'll have full control over the placement of your weapons. You can attack and move around just like you normally would, and then you can also lock onto a single opponent and enter into a dueling mode. The second you lock into a target, your right stick goes from controlling your camera to controlling your stance. If you flick to the right with your stick, you move to hold your sword or shield on the right side. So it seems like, once you've decided this is going to be the enemy that I'm locking onto, that it switches to a completely different control scheme, which I think is actually kind of an interesting idea, that when you're running around, you don't need a whole suite of fidelity when it comes to your whole move set, but that once you realize this is going down, this is going to be the next couple of minutes, that maybe they swap the analog stick to something that's a little more useful. So that idea in and of itself is kind of interesting, and some of the scuttlebutt around this game has been that it's sort of Dark Soulsian in some fashion. I don't know what that means, but hey, you say Dark Souls, you have my attention. From there, they announced an expansion to the crew with a complete graphical overhaul, which is kind of interesting. Trials Fusion Awesome Max. I don't really play the Trials games, although I think they're interesting. Anno 2205, which, hey, I'm going to give Ubisoft credit for dedicating a significant part of their press conference, which is to say any part of a press conference is significant because of the airtime and the lack of airtime that you really get in this kind of stage, that they put it to a tiny strategy game that probably doesn't sell a whole lot for them, but clearly has a very dedicated fan base. So hats off to the Anno fans out there that got their moment in the sun, and then grr to everyone else who for just a brief second thought maybe this could have been a Beyond Good and Evil 2 trailer, and we knew it wasn't, because it never is, and that never happens at these press conferences, despite the fact that they refuse to just straight up acknowledge they're killing that game. So just say it so we can stop thinking about that game. But it was a trailer for Anno 2205, so good for you, Anno fans. Not so good for Beyond Good and Evil hopefuls. We're never getting that game. That game's never coming out. They also showed an updated look at The Division. I tweeted during the press conference that everything I've heard about that game suggests that it's been in some pretty bad shape over the years, and that the version they're presenting on screen is far different than the version that is actually playable in the studio, and that these slices that they're showing to the public are meant to sort of represent where they'd like to be with the game. Now, that's not uncommon. It is not unique for a game that is kind of a mess to put together a demo as a way for both presenting the best foot forward to the public and the best foot forward for the developer who is trying to coalesce their ambition into something that makes a little more sense. But I've also heard that Division has just been kind of a mess all the way through. But they did announce a release date. They said they're coming out next March, and so, come hell or high water, it seems like that game is going to try and come out early next year. It's certainly possible it can get delayed until spring of 2016. I would say that is more likely than unlikely. But that said, putting a release date on it says that they sort of feel they have some solid ground to move on. And so I can't say I've been super following that game's development, both from a reporting internal perspective and from watching the gameplay, because everything I've looked at it goes like, that could be interesting, but it seems incredibly faked. And so I guess it's going to be playable at E3, so we'll have a better sense maybe of what they're going for, even if it is still in kind of a controlled environment. But I'm apprehensive about it, and but I wish them nothing of the best. I would rather that be a good game than a bad game, so hopefully they're able to figure out what they're going for. Not super interested myself in Rainbow Six Siege, but I have to admit that when they brought out Angela Bassett on stage, because she is going to be sort of one of the main characters. I think she oversees the sort of Rainbow Six operations. And then they had her talking to Aisha Tyler. Got to say, it was kind of a cool moment. The two people of color were on stage talking about video games, and it seemed like they were unscripted. It seemed like they had some general talking points, but that Aisha Taylor and Angela Bassett were just kind of shooting the shit on stage. And the fact that that wasn't a big deal was in itself kind of a big deal. And I've got to say that it seems like if you look at these press conferences so far, video games as an industry seems to be taking this diversity question really seriously. They seem to be employing more options to be different kinds of characters, whether we're talking women or people of color. They seem to be representing more of the development studios that work on this, who are both women and people of color, and the players of games who are both women and people of color. And that is a very cool thing. You know, it's step by step. It's not all the way there yet. It might not ever be, because that's just how change happens. But I like that we're getting to a place, closer to a place, where these things aren't a big deal. Where when I tweet it out, it doesn't get a bunch of faves and retweets, because it shouldn't. It should be something that we just look at, go, who's this person representing this game? What game are they trying to show? It shouldn't be a point for me or anyone else to have to say, it's encouraging to see this happening. But it is encouraging to see this happening, and I do want to point it out. I do want to applaud it. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully this isn't just a sort of, well, in a response to things like Gamergate, I guess we better, get more of this out there. No, I hope this is a genuine, enthused desire to showcase more of what's happening in games, what's already been happening in games, but doing so on the biggest stage that video game has imaginable. And so, my hat's off to you. Not that weird Assassin's Creed hat that's on that main character, but, a hat and a tiny bit of applause. And then as we kind of round out towards the end, we had a CG trailer for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which I have to assume that if it's CG at Ubisoft's press conference, we're getting a real-time demo at Sony's press conference. So I'll kind of hold any thoughts on the new Assassin's Creed till we actually see how it plays. But I will say up front that the developers of this game worked on the Black Flag DLC Freedom Cry. And although Freedom Cry wasn't perfect, I really enjoyed the ambition, experimental gameplay, and storytelling that they did in Freedom Cry. And the idea that they get to unleash themselves on a whole Assassin's Creed game is exciting in the context of an Assassin's Creed game. It'll still be an Assassin's Creed game. There will still be Assassin's Creed things that you do. So if you're genuinely tired of a lot of the gameplay tropes in that series, I can't imagine that Syndicate's going to be able to reinvent the wheel there. But even within the constraints of Black Flag, I thought that Freedom Cry was trying to do some really interesting things. So I hope they're able to bring that to Syndicate. And I don't know if a press conference is going to be the place where we see that to bear fruit. Whether or not that's happening, I don't know. They're going to be going for the explosions and the bombast and all things of that nature. So it might be a little more time before we get a better sense of what they're trying to accomplish with Syndicate. But I'm hopeful. And then we closed out the Ubisoft press conference with Ghost Recon Wildlands. I thought, again, maybe there's a chance that it was going to be Beyond Good and Evil 2. Actually, I thought what they might close it out with, or that that wasn't there, was Zombie U. There have been persistent rumors that Ubisoft is working on Xbox One and PS4 and PC versions of Zombie U, in which they are reworking the Wii U launch title that was critically acclaimed, including myself. I managed to muscle that onto the Giant Bomb Game of the Year list when that came out in 2012, because not only did I think it used the Wii U in very inventive ways, but it was one of those games that introduced me to the Dark Souls style of play. I credit Zombie U with allowing me to go down the rabbit hole of those Souls types games, in which I became comfortable and accustomed and enjoyed games in which things are ripped from you. Your progress is essentially deleted, but your progress isn't really gone. It's because you've gained a knowledge base that allows you to move further, even if you don't have your guns and items from the time before. So I guess, even though I should be talking about Ghost Recon, I mostly am just talking about how I wish they had announced an updated version of Zombie U, because I think with, tweaked graphics and the Wii U stuff, while neat, I don't think was critical to what they pulled off in other areas of Zombie U. So, wasn't at E3, doesn't mean it won't happen. I still hope it happens. But they closed with Ghost Recon Wildlands, which reframes Ghost Recon, which is a series that's been away for a little while now. And rather than it being sort of a mission-based strategy shooter game that's been, so more along the lines of what we saw with Advanced Warfighter, the last kind of couple of installments, they've reimagined Ghost Recon as an open-world shooter in which one person can play, but you can also play with up to 4 people. And the promise they're making is that it's going to be dynamic, in which the game is going to respond and accommodate depending on the amount of people that are playing at once. And not only that, but that you just get dropped into this world and then go for it. We don't know exactly what that means. The trailer was kind of vague, and I was sort of writing it up as I was going through it, so I haven't had a chance to rewatch the trailer a second time. But I got to say, if they had just announced another standard mission-based Ghost Recon in the same fashion as we've had before, I probably would have been yawning. It's kind of what I was doing with Rainbow Six Siege. That game just sort of looked, okay, seems fine, but just didn't really strike me as something that was going to get me interested. But Ghost Recon Wildlands seems like it's really ambitious, and by ambitious, I think we're not going to see it for a long time. I mentioned at the top of the video that I think the videos and the games at the top and the closing of this press conference were stuff that, like, hey, we're working on this. It's cool. Eventually. And so I think Ghost Recon Wildlands is a game that we're going to see a lot more of in the next year or so, but I suspect we're not actually going to be playing that until the fall of 2016. And also, conspicuously, no Watch Dogs 2 here at E3 2015. That game, the first game, shipped in the spring of 2014, so you would have think that would have been enough time for them to kind of move on to getting a sequel together, but I'm actually kind of excited that they're giving that game the time it deserves to kind of cook, to kind of bake, to figure out what exactly they want to do with it. Watch Dogs had some really interesting ideas. I don't think it had what Assassin's Creed had, that when you played Assassin's Creed, a lot of what didn't work in the original game, you could see where they could make the leap, and they made that leap probably exponentially so in that sequel. But I don't know with Watch Dogs, you looked at that and went, yeah, they almost nailed it. In fact, I think they were wildly off the mark on Watch Dogs. There were some interesting concepts they were playing with there, but I think they kind of need to go back to the drawing board on what that game needs to be. And as I've expressed on Match 3 Podcast, I am tremendously sad that the sort of critical failure of Watch Dogs and the rejection of a lot of what was going on in that game probably means that we're not going to get another Chicago-based Watch Dogs. I can hope against hope. Maybe it will happen, but I think we may have seen the last of virtual Chicago in Watch Dogs or any other Ubisoft game, which makes me sad because it means my city is probably not going to be represented for a long, long time. But that does it for the Ubisoft press conference. Again, no Beyond Good and Evil 2. I'll just, say it again in case somehow at the end you were hoping I was lying and there was really a teaser for it. I think that game's dead. But I'm looking forward to the Sony press conference, which, like I've said before, I think is going to have some surprises. Of course, by the time you see this, it will probably already have started. You can see this and other reactions to various E3 press conferences here at youtube.com/Patrick Klepek. We'll probably do some live Q&A responding to other things that are happening at E3 throughout the week. Please stay tuned for that. Give me your comments on what you thought has been interesting at E3 below, and I will see all you guys real soon.